you all doing? Good. Okay, great. Thank you so much to Daniel, Denise, and Teresa, and everyone involved in PSYCHED and also Cork Healthy Cities. It's a real pleasure to be here. So thank you for that kind introduction. I am a food writer. It's not usually a stressful job, as I'm sure you can imagine. Food styling, on the other hand, can be a little tricky. That involves making food look pretty for ads and on digital or newspaper, and sometimes even TV ads as well. I'm also the host of the Sing Along Social, which is a zero-commitment choir designed for people who cannot sing. So if there are any bad singers in the house, you'd be very welcome to join my choir. So, as Daniel mentioned, I released my first book earlier this year. It's called Slow at Work: How to Work Less, Achieve More, and Regain Your Balance in an Always-On World. Sounds like the dream, right? So the reason I wrote this book is because I suffered from a very intense period of burnout about 2.5 years ago. So I reached that red bus that Hugh was talking about earlier. I was on the red bus and I didn't know how to get off it. So what was interesting is that my mind had been telling me through anxiety, through depression, through intense feelings of imposter syndrome at work, that I needed to change how I was working. But it wasn't until my body actually stepped in and gave me a little bit of a back injury that I actually finally stopped. So now what I'm trying to do is to stay somewhere between the blue bus and the red bus happens sometimes, I guess, but I really loved Hugh's analogy of the bus. So what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this evening, is I suppose a major turning point for me was when I went freelance full-time, which is 2 years ago. So I thought that everything would be better, that I would have a better work-life balance, that I wouldn't be juggling outside projects with a full-time project management job. And pretty soon I realized that I'm actually the worst boss that I've ever had. So I needed to go on an immediate management training program. So my way to do that was, strangely, to write a book. It's not everyone's way of slowing down, but it's the one that I chose. So one of the challenges I set myself was I wanted to ban the word busy from my life. I was really sick of hearing myself say, when someone asked me, "How are you?" "I'm really busy," you know? I wanted to just take it out of my vocabulary and see if it made me feel a little bit differently, because I felt I was so focused on the busyness that I felt I was in a cult of busyness almost, that I couldn't see beyond the busyness, the deadlines. I couldn't see the things that I was achieving, the experiences that I was having, the people I was meeting. So I decided to stop saying the word busy. And it was really interesting when people asked me, "How are you doing? Are you busy?" I would say, "No, I've actually just taken on just about enough," and I feel good about it. And it was weird. It was as if there was a glitch in the matrix, and I'd gone off script, and it was really interesting how people sort of responded to that. And what's so interesting about busyness is I think there's a misconception that we are the busiest people that have ever walked this earth. And I would like to argue that that is not necessarily true, because I would imagine that busyness is quite relative, and that a hunter-gatherer who was foraging for berries probably felt a little burnt out from time to time. The reason I think this is important is because I think we can get caught up in this cult of busyness and feel like there's no escape from that treadmill of burnout, deadlines, when in fact humans are incredibly resilient if we give ourselves the opportunity and the space to recover. So Hugh touched on this a little bit as well. I'm going to leave you with, I think, the most important thing that I learned through the 2-year experience of recovering from burnout. It has to do with a Cork woman, of course. So thank you, Cork. For my book project, I picked 10 topics that I constantly struggled with at work. So my favorite topic, procrastination, the imposter syndrome, our environment and how that impacts us. I also talked about money, technology as well, big topics. But my last chapter, I think, is the one that has made the biggest impact on me, and it's about recovery time. So I spoke to Derval O'Rourke, the Olympic hurdler, and she told me that athletes approach training in 3 parts. So they have their warm-up time, they have their training, and then they have their recovery time. And an athlete knows to maintain a high performance over a long period of time, they absolutely have to have that recovery time. It's just not possible for them to continue their training without taking the break. When Derval moved into the tech sector with her food startup, she thought it was unbelievable that other professions didn't have the same respect for recovery time. So after that conversation, I started to think about recovery time as a part of my job. That was very useful for me because I love to work, I love to do different projects, but I always struggle to prioritize my own breaks, my own recovery time. So now I absolutely consider my recovery time a non-negotiable part of my working week, because I know that if I don't have that recovery time, then I get into our red bus territory. So what I have done as well with recovery times, I found something a little bit epic, something that I really loved. So my recovery time is twice a week. I jump into the Dublin Sea and I swim. I wear a wetsuit, so I'm not that brave, but I'm a bit brave. And the point about recovery time, I think, is that I hope it's something that, it sounds actually like it's very related to the kind of projects that everybody is doing here. And I think for us to work together and allow each other and to encourage a culture where recovery time is respected, whether that's with your colleagues taking 15 minutes for lunch without your phones, without talking about work. That's all it has to take. Recovery time can be 2 hours in the sea, or it can be 15 minutes at lunchtime. So I wanted to congratulate you all on starting this conversation, and I look forward to seeing where the conversation leads. Thank you very much for having me.